Hey guys, what's going on? Jacob here. So now, in this being our last video on SQL in this Learning Web Development series, we're going to go over AJAX and how to display SQL data on a page after the page is loaded. This is the basis for modern JavaScript frameworks when working with databases and data. It's how sports scores on sites like ESPN and CBS Sports are displayed in real time. And once you get it down, it's really pretty easy. So let's get started. AJAX stands for Asynchronous JavaScript and XML. Through this, you can read data from a server or database after the page is loaded, update the web page after it's loaded, and send data to the database or server after the page is loaded. In other words, it's a really awesome tool once you learn how to harness it. AJAX works with all sorts of data types, but for now, we're just going to focus on PHP since that's how we're going to talk to the database. And don't worry too much about XML. We won't be dealing with it too much for right now, if at all, and it's pretty easy to learn. So the first thing we need to do is to write some JavaScript to make the AJAX call to the PHP and database. To do that, we'll create an XML HTTP request object. This object is how we'll set up the request, make the request, and get data from the request to print it out on the page. Our object comes with an open method and a send method. The open method accepts 3 parameters. The method of sending, either get or post, remember those, the file to get, and whether this is asynchronous or not. It's almost always true. Then the send method sends this request off to be run. So for today, we'll run a get request for the first team in our teams table. We'll denote this by our PHP file name, getTeamsPHP, and then putting a question mark, team_ID equals 1 after that as a parameter, then send it. Finally, go back to before the open function. Here we need to define the onReadyStateChange property for our XML request object. For now, just set up an empty function. We'll come back and fill it in later. Now comes the hard part, getting that data from the database and passing it back to the JavaScript. For this, we're going to need a new PHP file that has the same name as the file that we listed back in the JavaScript. Inside this file, we're first going to get the parameter. Even though we listed get as the method, we have to use the request variable to get the parameter. But don't worry, it behaves the same way as get. So we use request team ID to get our team ID. Next, we connect our PHP to the database like we did last time. Then we run a MySQL query on the database. To use our variable in the where clause, we simply place it after the equal sign like this. In PHP, when you use the double quotation marks for strings, you can place variables inside without the need to concatenate the two. Then we get the results and parse through them like we did last time. Then we simply echo the results for our JavaScript to read and do stuff with. So in this case, we would just echo out the team name column for the team. Finally, it's time to print our data out onto the page with JavaScript. This is the fun part and one of the easiest parts of the whole process. Remember when I mentioned to create that function for the onReadyStateChange function? This is where our JavaScript will go. But first, create a new HTML page with the basic setup. Then add in a div with an ID of AJAX data. Next, add a button with an onClick value of getFirstTeam. Then in the JavaScript, we'll run a check to see if the function is ready to go and that we actually got usable data back from the PHP. If so, we change the inner HTML of our AJAX div to be equal to the team name that we got back. Finally, wrap all of our JavaScript into a function named getFirstTeam. Then go back to the page, click the button, and now our first team is being shown. Really cool, right? There are so many things that you can do with this. You can run it on page load to get values or posts from a database. Use the setInterval function to run checks on the database at certain times, and so much more. It's truly the most powerful tool in all of JavaScript. Well, that's all for today, and that's all for this beginning web development series. If you followed through the whole series, I hope that you picked up a lot of tips and you feel confident about learning web development more fully. As for what's next, we'll probably go into WordPress and WordPress development since that's the most popular CMS out there and the one I'm most familiar with. And it's a really good way to dive deeper into web development in general. In the meantime, do you have any questions over what we went over today or just SQL in general? If so, leave them down in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. But until next time, good luck and happy coding.